There's a story about a chess grandmaster who, after decades of playing, was once beaten by a complete beginner. The man had studied thousands of strategies, memorized every move in the book, and yet he lost to someone who had never played before. How? Simple. The beginner didn't follow the rules. They moved the pieces in ways that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. Turns out, the expert wasn't losing because he was bad at chess. He was losing because he was trapped inside a mental box, a set of expectations that dictated what was possible and what wasn't. He had spent his whole life mastering a game inside a box, while the beginner had no idea the box even existed. Now here's where it gets weird. What if you're doing the exact same thing, but with reality? Think about it. You've spent years being told what's real, what's possible, what's normal. You've been given a set of instructions on how to live, what to believe, how to react, and you follow them. Not because you chose to, but because you never even considered breaking the rules. I mean, imagine if someone told you gravity only worked because you believe in it. Sounds ridiculous, right? But humor me for a second. What if you had been raised in a world where people casually floated around? You'd think nothing of it. It would just be how things are. But drop someone from this world into that one, and they'd lose their mind. They'd be clinging to the walls like a terrified cat. The point? Reality isn't just what's real. It's what you accept as real. Let's do a quick test. Wherever you are, try to notice everything around you that's red. Really look, scan the room, memorize it. Now, without looking away, answer this. How many blue things did you see? Exactly. Your brain was so focused on looking for red, it ignored everything else. And if something as simple as color can vanish from your awareness just because you weren't expecting it, what else are you missing? And now, let me absolutely ruin your ability to ever eat in public again. There's a psychological trick where, if you subtly nod your head while talking, people are way more likely to agree with you without realizing why. Now imagine how many salesmen, politicians, and influencers are out there bobbing their heads like pigeons while convincing you of things. Once you notice it, you can't unsee it. This isn't just a brain trick. It's the exact way your reality is shaped. Your mind filters out what doesn't fit the narrative you believe in, and that means everything you think is real might just be a very, very convincing illusion. The real question is, who's deciding what you get to see? So, we've established that your mind filters reality based on what you expect. Here's where it gets even weirder. You ever have one of those moments where you walk into a room and completely forget why you're there? Like, 1 second you're on a mission, fully convinced you need something, but the moment you step in, poof, nothing. Just standing there, blank-faced, suddenly questioning all of existence. Scientists call it the doorway effect. Your brain, ever the efficient little machine, erases short-term memories the moment you change environments. Why? Because it assumes, welp, new room, new context. Whatever was important back there clearly isn't needed anymore. Now, imagine this isn't just about rooms. What if your brain does this with entire ideas? You hear something mind-blowing, a concept that completely shifts the way you see things. It rattles you for a moment, maybe even sticks with you for a few hours. But give it a day or two, and suddenly, gone, like a dream that made perfect sense while you were in it. But the moment you wake up, it just slips away. And here's where things get really unsettling. What if this is happening all the time? Think back to when you were a kid. You had an imagination that could turn anything into an adventure. A cardboard box wasn't just a box. It was a spaceship, a castle, a portal to another world. But as you grew up, that ability got replaced with practicality. Except, let's be honest, practicality is just another word for limiting beliefs. See, society rewards predictability. It likes people who follow patterns, who stick to what they're told is normal. And so, over time, your mind learns to erase the wild, limitless thinking you once had. It's like a self-cleaning system, removing anything that doesn't fit the mold you've been conditioned into. Ever wonder why, when you look at an optical illusion, you can't unsee it once you've seen it? That's because your brain locks in a new perspective once it deems it useful. But what about the opposite? What about the things your brain actively chooses to forget? There's a reason why most people, despite having access to every book, every discovery, every bit of knowledge in human history, will still live their entire lives inside the same mental walls. Not because they can't see beyond them, but because their mind won't even let them look. And that's why, right now, there's a massive blind spot in how you see reality, a whole section of your perception that's being quietly erased before you even notice it exists. So the real question is, how much of your reality is actually real? So your brain filters reality, deletes information it thinks isn't important, and basically acts like a stingy bouncer at a club, only letting in what it thinks belongs while kicking out anything that doesn't fit. But now we hit a weird problem. If your brain is in charge of what you see, remember, and even perceive as real, then who's actually in control? Ever been in a conversation where someone says, "You always do this," and your first thought is, "No, I don't." But then, 30 minutes later, in the shower, you start thinking, "Wait a minute, do I?" That's your brain blocking information in real time, defending its own version of reality. The same way it edits out unimportant memories, it also filters feedback about yourself. Because the last thing your brain wants is for you to start questioning the very identity it has carefully pieced together over time. This is why people can deny obvious truths, even when the proof is right in front of them. The moment something threatens the version of reality their brain has built, it's immediately rejected. It's not about logic, it's about mental self-preservation. And this doesn't just apply to personal beliefs. Ever notice how once you learn a new word, you start seeing it everywhere? Or when you get a new car, suddenly everyone on the road seems to have the same model. That's called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, or, as I like to call it, brain playing tricks on you again syndrome. Your brain wasn't hiding these things before, you were just blind to them. But now that your focus has shifted, your mind is allowing them to exist in your reality. Now, here's where this gets dangerous. If your brain is capable of hiding reality from you until it decides it's important, then how much else is it blocking right now? Not because it doesn't exist, but because you were never told to look for it. This is why people live inside the same mental loops, repeating the same thoughts, making the same choices, and wondering why life feels so predictable. Because their brain is running the same limited script over and over again. Most people don't realize that thoughts are just habits, and like any habit, they can be changed. But the longer you let your brain control the filter, the harder it is to see past the walls it has built. So, the real trick to controlling your reality isn't about learning new things. It's about noticing what you've been trained to ignore. Because the second you start paying attention to the things your brain usually deletes, your entire world starts to shift. So, if your brain is running a script on autopilot, deleting, filtering, and deciding what's real before you even process it, how do you take control back? Here's the catch. You can't outthink the system by just knowing it exists. That's like realizing you're in a dream and still not being able to wake up. Have you ever tried to recall a dream right after waking up, but it slips away the moment you focus on it, like it was never even there? That's your brain's reality filter at full power. It doesn't just erase what's unnecessary. It makes sure you can't even remember what was once clear. And it does this with your daily thoughts too. Try this. Think about something that genuinely excites you, something that makes your heart race a little. Maybe it's a wild idea, a dream job, or something you always wanted to try but never did. Now notice what happens right after you think about it. A counter thought probably showed up. That's not realistic. You don't have time for that. Yeah, but what if it fails? Your brain attacks unfamiliar thoughts like they're intruders in a security system. It prioritizes predictability over possibility because possibility means change, and change means risk. Even when nothing is actually dangerous, your brain reacts like it is. Ever felt a tiny vibration in your pocket, checked your phone, and there was nothing? That's called phantom vibration syndrome, and it happens because your brain is trained to expect a notification, so much so that it creates the feeling out of thin air. Now apply that to everything else your brain expects. If it expects things to be difficult, they will be. If it expects opportunities to be rare, they will be. If it expects the worst, it'll find proof of it everywhere. Your reality doesn't change until your expectations do, because right now, your brain is like a GPS stuck on an old route. It's convinced it knows the best way to navigate life, even if it keeps leading you in circles. And that's why most people stay stuck. Not because there aren't better paths available, but because their brain is deleting them before they even get a chance to see them. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Scientists have found that your brain starts shaping your future actions before you even decide on them. Before you reach for a drink, your brain has already fired the signal. Before you text someone, the decision was already queued up. Before you randomly think of an idea, your brain had already been processing it in the background. So, the biggest question isn't, what do you want to do? It's, what thoughts are being pre-selected for you? Because if your brain is deciding what's possible before you even get to weigh in, then how much of your life have you actually chosen? So, if your brain is pre-selecting what's real before you even get a say in it, can you actually take back control? Here's where it gets even stranger. Your brain doesn't just decide what's important, it decides what's invisible. Ever lost your keys? Searched everywhere, only to find them right in front of you the whole time? That wasn't you being careless. That was your brain deleting information in real time. It's called inattentional blindness, and it happens because your brain is obsessed with efficiency. It filters out anything that doesn't match what it expects. So if your brain has already decided that your keys aren't on the table, then you literally won't see them there. Even though your eyes picked up the information, your brain blocked it. Now apply that to everything else in your life. If your brain expects life to be difficult, it deletes proof that things could be easy. If your brain expects rejection, it filters out signs of acceptance. If your brain expects the worst, it will blind you to better possibilities. This is why some people seem to attract opportunities effortlessly, while others stay stuck, no matter how hard they try. It's not luck, it's perception, because if your brain refuses to perceive something, it might as well not exist. And the wildest part, your brain doesn't just filter reality, it fills in the gaps with made-up information. Scientists once ran an experiment where participants were shown two images in rapid succession. The first was a person's face, and the second was a completely different person. But when asked to describe what they saw, most people didn't even notice the swap. Their brain seamlessly blended the two faces together, creating a person that never existed. Their memory was altered instantly, and they had no idea it happened. Your brain does this all the time. Think about a childhood memory. The more you've recalled it, the less accurate it probably is. Why? Because every time you remember something, your brain rewrites it slightly. It fills in gaps, tweaks the details, and then it saves the new version over the old one, like a bad game of telephone. By now, some of your most vivid memories might be partially or entirely fiction. So let's put this all together. Your brain filters out what doesn't fit its expectations, fills in the gaps with invented details, changes memories every time you recall them. And yet, we trust it completely. We assume our perception is accurate. We assume our memories are reliable. We assume our thoughts are our own. But are they? And if not, how do you ever really know what's real? So if your brain is deleting, distorting, and rewriting reality in real time, where does that leave you? Let's get something straight. Most people will never realize this is happening. They'll go through life convinced that what they see, remember, and believe is the absolute truth, not because they've tested it, but because they've never thought to question it. And that's exactly how the system was designed to work. Here's something you won't hear in a motivational speech. Most people don't change, not because they can't, but because they never realize they should. You ever notice how some people seem to live in a completely different world, even though they exist in the same reality as you? The ones who always attract the right opportunities, who seem to have life figured out, who make things look effortless. It's not that they were born lucky, it's that their perception of reality is different from yours. They see things you don't, not because they're smarter, not because they're better, but because their mental filter isn't blocking them. You were never taught to see beyond the version of reality you were handed. And once your mind locked onto that version, it started deleting everything that didn't fit. But here's the catch. You can rewire the filter. You can train your brain to stop ignoring opportunities, to stop reinforcing old patterns, to stop running the same outdated script. And it doesn't take some life-altering revelation. It starts with small shifts. Step 1. Question everything you assume is true. Why do you believe what you believe? Where did that belief come from? And, most importantly, who benefits from you thinking that way? Step 2. Expose yourself to things that break your mental patterns. Ever notice how when you travel, meet new people, or try something unfamiliar, your brain feels more awake? That's because new experiences disrupt the filter. They force your brain to build new connections. Step 3. Catch the autopilot moments. Every time you find yourself saying, "That's just how I am," stop. Is it really? Or is that just a story you've been telling yourself for years? Because here's the thing. Most people will never do any of this. Not because they can't, but because their mental filter blocks the very idea of questioning reality. But once you see the pattern, you can break it. And once you break it, reality starts working for you instead of against you. At that point, you're not just playing the game. You're the one writing the rules. So, what do you think? Have you ever caught yourself running on autopilot? Or noticed reality bending in ways you can't explain? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're ready to see just how deep this goes, stick around, because we're only getting started.